up, guys? Tambo here with your Week 3 core report. It was another huge week for Run Pure members, as once again, our logos were all over the leaderboard. I myself actually kicked things off, hitting for 38K on the Thursday NFL Showdown slate, and then once again with another 35K on the PGA slate for President's Cup. You can catch all my core plays and attack plan for every NFL slate, as well as for PGA, available to premium members on runpuresports.com. You Kill Bill Walsh followed up, nailing his CFP core plays for the second week in a row. Shout out to GoBoys18 for hitting over $7,500 on the Friday DK CFP slate. On the NFL main slate, the man shipped big yet again with a $105,000 hit on DraftKings. But once again, it was one of Big T's cores that broke the slate on Monday Night Football. Big T made the unique call of plugging kicker Graham Gano in at captain, opening up salary to load up on studs for a projected low total game. Tony actually called his shot earlier in the day on our free NFL Showdown show.
What does a kicker have to score to get you there if you play him in the captain, Tony?
I mean, I think to like full ship, you would need 5+ field goals. But in a game like this, you could get 5+ field goals.
By the way, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, what the hell are you thinking? It's free. Just click the red subscribe button on our channel or the bottom right corner of our videos. Big T's strategy paid off big time, shipping literally all the money on DraftKings. Tony won over $280K himself, but he was not alone. RPS members chopped the top prize in the DraftKings Millie Maker, including JCOM turned $70 into $7K. Derek Bowe turned $45 into over $10K. BWalshow5 did the exact same thing. BP Consi turned $90 into over $10K. Jeffy B123, Noon7, MBY Littell 1928, Armed Rogery, Hard Work 24/7, and DSF Dom all joined in, hitting over $10K each. Jay Gingery turned $245 into over $12K. Gators S070, Master 24, and APOC 14 hit for $13K each. Guy Nation Matt Guy shipped over $20,000. Taylor Made himself hit for $20,000 as well. Uncle T even got in on the action, shipping over $27,000. And Rubio's core plays and playbook nailed the game script too, and he joined in on the fun, hitting for over $19,000 himself. I cannot stress enough the benefits of being a member at Run Pure Sports. All it takes is one night like this, and it can set you up for the entire season. And we give you guys the tools and content to make it happen. Head on over to runpuresports.com to check out all our premium options, including SaberSim packages, and we'll see your screenshots in the Discord soon. Until next week, good luck in your contest, and let's keep running pure.
The interesting thing this week, and it's been this way for at least the first couple of weeks that I've seen in terms of pricing, is the elite rushing quarterbacks, right? The elite rushing quarterbacks. I'm talking about Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Kyler Murray are all 7.5 or above. And last week, we all tried, myself included. I said I'm starting lineups with Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams, which led me to pay down, which we'll get to. Spread, by the way, how much 7.9K Patrick Mahomes did you play on DraftKings last week?
Not enough there. Well, he actually didn't do that good. I didn't play him. I went the other route. I went higher owned on my position players, and I cheaped out on the quarterback. Actually, Mahomes didn't get you there, did he?
No, he that was the thing. Mahomes was the talk of the town because of his capabilities, the matchup with Indianapolis. And that's the thing. These guys don't do the same thing week to week. You're trying to get the outlier game. And you know, even guys like Mahomes, Lamar Jackson has now done it, 40 points each of the last 2 weeks, 40 points plus each of the last 2 weeks. But, oh my goodness, I didn't even see you guys there. Welcome. It's the Old Guys Pod, a.k.a. the Wishbone. We're here. And in case you haven't noticed by now, we're missing a member. And listen, this is kind of hearsay because I didn't hear it from Holden himself, but I'm friendly with some of the guys that he works at VSIN. And it's a typical Holden type injury. He's on the IL. It may only last 24 hours. But this is what the guy said happened. He was working on his gag reflex. But the instrument that he was working with, he chipped a couple of teeth. So Holden is right now, as we speak, at the dentist. Pray for him. Pray for Holden. If you want to go to Twitter, hashtag pray for Holden at Run Pure Sports. It's all in good fun. Spread, the one thing as the newest member here that you'll learn, and you probably learned it last week because I had a conflict And I heard I got attacked. I couldn't bring myself to listen to being attacked, but all bets are off. It's all in good fun. You never know what stories people are going to tell about what's going on. But outside of not playing Mahomes, that was what I did. I went down at quarterback. How was your week last week in the NFL?
It wasn't too bad. I didn't make too many lineups. I just did 3 bullets. Min cashed on one of them, so I'll take that. But I'm hoping to have a better week this week here. Of course, you talked about a couple of guys that we were really high on. They came up short, and that was Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson. So can't wait to see what your guys' expectations are for both those players this week. I feel like I have a pretty good idea about Adams, but boy, Jefferson, after that first week, 2 no-shows.
You know, it's interesting. And I talked about quarterbacks not doing the same thing every week, week to week, different game plans. And that's the thing in the NFL, right? Pete, teams are watching videotape. We hadn't seen it, though. We really hadn't seen it with Cooper Kupp all that often. And he had a down game against the Cardinals as well last week. But Jefferson, the way they were using him, all of a sudden, it's like, hey, this guy's going to be outstanding every week. Credit to the Detroit Lions and what they did to slow him down last week. I don't know if we'll credit the Titans or give discredit to the way that the Vegas Raiders game planning was, but I got to introduce our third member here. And man, I hear from what I hear. And again, it's the hearsay. I don't want to go all in on it, but I hear he's called Tournament Terry now. Big showdown on Monday, $27,000. Uncle T, I hear from what I hear, you guys, you, Big T, some of the family members, I hear the Bengals are doing you a solid. You're actually sitting in the home end zone, right in the end zone. You're going to sit right there. They're going to move you off as the team marches down that direction. It's going to be the whiteout. How's your week been? I mean, I know it started off pretty good.
Yeah, appreciate the introduction, Spread. Good to see you, my friend.
What's up?
Holden, not so much. Yeah, I won't maybe hit on him too hard. We could go on about Holden for 10 minutes about his fork mishap or whatever the hell I mean, I'm sitting there at lunch with Big T today. We're at Chick-fil-A, right? So I get a DM from Holden. I can't do the pod tonight. So I said, Big T, you want to fill in? Absolutely not. What the hell is wrong with Holden? I'm like, I don't know. He just said he couldn't do the pod. Ask him. So I asked him, and he said he chipped 3 teeth on a fork. So my first reaction is, there's no way he can make that up, right? I mean, you don't just make up some kind of thing like so. It had to be true. But then we sat for a few minutes and thought, that's probably right up Holden's alley. He probably was on the edibles, probably had a little too much there, probably didn't have any idea what he was doing. And somehow the buffoon chipped 3 teeth. But anyway, back to your question, JT. Yeah, the week actually on Sunday did not start off particularly well for Uncle T. JT, similar to you when you opened the show before you knew we were on. I had 5 builds last week. I had 4 of them with Justin Jefferson, and on 3 of them I paired him with Devontae Adams. So, and I had no Mac Hollins, right, which he crushed at that low price tag that I think I'm almost positive is on the winner. I didn't have any of that. So I got a big old bagel back on Sunday, which was very depressing, very, very hurtful for Uncle T. But then, yeah, on Monday, again, sitting there eating some dinner with Big T at one of the local sports bars and with my boys and his son. And we built the teams from there. And I got to give Big T a shout out. I mean, we were sitting there plugging in the teams on our own. And then I was trying to think of ways, JT and Spread, to get a little bit different. Obviously, on Showdowns, we're always talking about ways to get different, right? And I was going to try to leave Salary on the board initially. And he kind of talked me out of it a little bit. And I'm glad he did, because my 1v1 that really got me onto that team was CD Lamb instead of Shepard. Now, I know there's a big difference in price, but again, my thought process was, again, to leave Salary and try to get different that way. I was kind of higher on the Giants coming in, and he kind of talked me out of that. And it ended up, being the 1v1 out of that core that we use. So anyway, yeah, very good Monday night. Obviously, he shipped, what was it, almost 300K, which it's like days that end in Y now for Big T. But and then to wrap it up, yeah, we're going. I went over and got my white out. I drove down to Paul Brown Stadium today while I was at work, and got my white cap. I got a white hoodie, so yeah, we've got about 8 or 10 of us going down to the game tomorrow night. JT, I don't know that we're in the end zone. I don't know. I haven't heard that we were going to be a part of any kind of introductory, for the anthem on the field or anything. Maybe that's coming later tomorrow as a surprise. But no, looking forward to it. Should be a good game. I was talking to you. I really wish I would have got on the Bengals at -3 on Monday morning, as it's gone up to -4. It might go to 4.5 now by game time tomorrow. So a little upset I didn't hop on it at -3, but yeah, good week, good start of the week, and we're going to crush it on Showdown tomorrow, and then hopefully give the people some winners for Sunday.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if when I tune in, if they show the national anthem, because sometimes they just don't, because somehow that's like I don't know, some people don't like it. I wouldn't be surprised to see you and Big T standing next to each other with Amber holding up the flag as the anthem is being sung. But that's awesome. And the other thing, Uncle T, what I saw is, yeah, you were in the big Millie Maker, but also you split first in some of these other contests, the 3 maxes, and that's where you actually made more money in, I think it was the $12 or something like that. Just a fantastic strategy there of spreading out, not pulling all your eggs in that big one where you absolutely have to get first. And then as you see, even if you get first, still a nice split for only 3 lineups.
Yeah, and it was definitely, talking just briefly, and again, I know this is Wednesday night we're recording. People won't see this till late tonight or tomorrow. And obviously the boys, with the other just plethora of shows, obviously Monday, Tuesday, today, we just crush it on the review shows. Then we tee up the following week. Those guys have talked about it. But yeah, the build, people that what we call the haters, right? The haters around the industry that aren't with From Pure or envious of the success that multiple people that have had success, they're going to say, well, you jam in the kicker there, and then, you already know you're going to, if you do ship it, you're going to ship it with 1,200 people. Or I think the one Twitter guy said, yeah, you want to ship it with 1,300 people and tie for first, go ahead. Well, I think it was only 113 or whatever it was, but hey, 10K on the Millie shipper, who's going to turn that away? Now, I get it. If you're doing that long term and you're in it, I had this, not to go off too much on a tangent here, but I had a side conversation with Mangone on Monday about it, or on Tuesday about it, excuse me. And, I think if you do this for a living, which I don't, JT, you got your regular job. I got my regular job. I'm doing this obviously we always want to win money and we want to have some success and do well. I enjoy the thrill and the whatever of building the teams, especially in baseball and in golf. But I think long term, maybe the route that we went on Monday that did tie and ship the money, maybe that's not the best way. But again, these showdowns are a week to week, a game by game basis on how you want to build based off of how you think the game and the outcome is going to come. So I see no problem with it. I don't understand why people get upset at other people's success, and if, like Tambo, he was on a couple of shows earlier in the week. He had, I think he said he got nothing back on Monday based off of his builds. He's got no animosity, right? He's happy as can be other people ship. So, it was definitely a different build. We may build different tomorrow, but for that one game, it worked.
Well, I think everyone is so focused on getting different, getting unique. Not that that's wrong, but the public's right every now and then. And I did the Showdown show on Monday night with Big T and JSU. And we do that on Mondays, sometimes with whistles. I think he'll be back this week. And, Tony made a great point. He didn't see how these teams scored. I mean, you've got a Mike McCarthy offense. You've got a fantastic dynamic defense on the Dallas side with Daniel Jones and limited weapons, even more limited weapons now that Sterling Shepard got hurt, which was terrible to see. But when you're looking at this and you say, hey, I don't know how these teams are going to score, sometimes the right answer is they're just not. They're going to kick a bunch of field goals. I think you got 2 touchdowns in the game. It was Saquon broke one, and I think you got Zeke into the end zone. We talked extensively because initially people were like, I'm off Zeke, can't play him. And Vegas knew something we didn't. His props were pretty high. They were higher than he had, rushed for all season long. So listen, when the public's right and you don't see an edge, it's not the worst thing in the world to just say, you know what? I'm going to take my chances with going with the public build. Spread, on that note, there's a lot of talk, the public, about Tom Brady, Giselle. What's your thoughts on this? Rumor is they're in Miami and they're separated. And Tom hasn't looked like himself, no doubt. He was missing Chris Godwin, was missing Mike Evans. The offensive line there, a lot of injuries, decimated. What's your take on Tom and Giselle? Is this going to impact him, or should we not be looking at the Bucs because of this? What do you think this has to do with how he plays on the field, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, not to be cavalier or presumptuous, but my guess is he misses those wide receivers more than he misses his wife right now, as far as his football performance. And I'm sure it is bugging him. But boy, he's been able to compartmentalize for years here, and get things done on the field. So I'm sure his focus and everything is the same, but there's a reason he left New England. It was because he didn't want to throw to guys like Scotty Miller and Russell Gage, right? He wanted some real weapons. It's smart. It's self-awareness, understanding. At my age, I can't make these below average guys good anymore. Give me some guys with actual talent. Let's work together. I'm tired of just getting these guys out of nowhere. So my guess is it is affecting him, but I think the injuries are a lot worse.
Absolutely. And certainly he missed Evans and Godwin last week. Russell Gage came up big. Gage is a guy who has some talent. I don't think he's a wide receiver one talent. Came up big last week. If you had him, he actually saved my couple of lineups that cashed because I had to play. I had to do it, Uncle T. I had him and Devontae Parker, and I'm like, this is disgusting because I had to play them to get to Devontae and Justin Jefferson. And not only did they outscore them, like they weren't in the same class. It was like point per dollar, like 5 to 1.3 or something like that. Just absolutely wild. Uncle T, we were talking before we came on. I'm in Atlanta. Not to digress to baseball, but I've got tickets to the Braves and Mets this Friday, this Sunday. I remain very excited about this because they're tied right now. But big hurricane hitting Florida right now, and looks like it's going to come through Atlanta maybe as early as Friday, and at least the outer bands of it. And there's talk that they're going to move this Tampa Bay game, and they may move it to Minnesota. So thoughts on the hurricane hitting, and then thoughts on these games that are played. There was some talk earlier today that I think is wild, mostly because I'm a Braves season ticket holder, about moving the Mets Braves series. I'm like, no. That's too much. That's a bridge too far. If they have to play one of those games next week, we'll be fine. That'll be fine. But you have to equate the home field advantage. You can't give the Mets a leg up anywhere, especially at a time when they're crumbling. But I digress. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about thoughts. Yeah, I mean, thoughts for those people down there. You and I talked again pre-show. I've got it up on my big screen here to my right. It is sad. I mean, it's we were around for Katrina back, that was 20 years ago, and the devastation and stuff. And this looks like it's every bit as bad as maybe that's going to be. And yeah, it definitely stinks, and it brings you back to kind of reality, and just hope that those people are okay. And the people that didn't evacuate, I'm not sure why they didn't or haven't. So hopefully it's not too bad. But as far as the game moving and stuff, I believe JT was the Sunday night game, right? In Tampa, right? I think Sunday.
It's not on the main slate.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, we should still get a showdown show or game that night. It'll be interesting too, because you talk about you guys both talked about the injuries and things like that. One guy you didn't mention that he hasn't had in quite a while is Gronkowski, right? I know it's just another piece, but right. Him not coming back and having that extra security blanket, at tight end, and then you throw in the Godwin injury, the Evans suspension. Yeah, spread's right. I mean, he's probably like, where are my receivers at? What did I sign back up for when I came out of retirement? But yeah, and then again, off of the game last week, you mentioned Russell Gage, and boy, he was wide receiver number one last week because he had to be. He just got peppered those last two drives when they were trying to come back and tie that game against the Packers, where there was hardly any scoring. But they got a tough matchup here, no matter where it's played. The Chiefs coming off of, one thing we didn't talk about because they hit it pretty good on the shows there, but on Sunday, not to hammer too much with Big T, but man, he called that game right. All the donkeys in the chat, and I won't mention them. Some of them were RPS guys. They were like, oh, they're going to put up 35 plus, and how can Mahomes not score 30 points and the Chiefs get, like, there was no way there was going to be a low scoring game, right? There's no way. And Big T in the chat, he said, why can't they win a 20-17 game? And, again, he's on a heater right now, and anything he says right now, I'm going to go with, because when he gets on these heaters, he tends to be right more times than not. But I look for the Chiefs, to be honest, guys. I don't know what you guys think about that game in general spread, maybe from a betting standpoint, if you've even looked at it yet. I'm seeing it at 1, maybe Tampa Bay getting 1 point. I don't know if that'll shift one way or the other based off of if they do move that game to Minnesota. But boy, this looks like a pretty good spot for the Chiefs.
Yeah,
we have the line being pretty close to right, but I think the game's getting moved because they made a good point. Even if they can play with the weather, do they want to divert all the social services that's required to run a stadium event? So I would be really surprised if they played it in Tampa, to be honest.
So spread to follow up then, if you think, because you follow this and are in tune with this a lot better. I bet games and stuff, but you follow it. So if Kansas City right now is listed, at least I just saw it at 1. If this goes to a neutral site, do you think that moves it to maybe 3.5, or do you think it would get that high?
I don't think it would get past 3.
Okay.
I think it moves it to 2.5 or 3, though.
Okay.
If they played in Minnesota, right, they'd probably have the crowd advantage. I would assume a bunch of people from Kansas City make the trip. Maybe people evacuating, but I can't imagine people in Tampa really too worried about supporting their football team right now.
Well, I mean, you can maybe hop on the Chiefs now. I may do it after the show and hop on them if I can still get -1. If there's a good chance it gets moved, which it probably is, like you mentioned, maybe a good chance to hop on the Chiefs if you can before that line moves.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Uncle T, we're definitely going to talk about the quarterback disrespect last week. We're definitely going to talk about that. We are going to get there. Spread, you ever lived through a hurricane? Have you ever been in a place where there was a hurricane?
Nope. I've lived on the West Coast my whole life.
California, yeah. Californians deal with the earthquakes, and the East Coast.
And fires now. Fires is our
now.
new thing. Yeah.
Fires now. Jesus. All right, we'll move into this. We'll move into quarterbacks. Brett, I'll start with you here in terms of the quarterbacks this week. Started this a couple of minutes ago, right? Josh Allen, DraftKings pricing 8.4. Lamar Jackson 8.3. Jalen Hurts 8.2. Kyler 7.6. Kyler 7.6 on the road at Carolina. You've got Jackson and Allen are facing each other, and it's just an interesting setup there where you want these quarterbacks with upside. Are you focusing in on one of these guys, or does someone else have your attention? You looking to do what you did last week and pay down a little bit?
No, I want to switch, and maybe I'm overreacting here, but looking through, because of the schedule, we don't have the same on top, right, with certain players, right? No Tyreek Hill there. The Miami guys are out. No Jamar Chase. So we don't have the same spend ups available at wide receiver and running back. I don't mind any of these 4 spend ups. I'm not a big Kyler guy, but he could be in line for a nice statistical performance. You're looking at him at 7,600, but I'm really looking at these top 3. Jacksonville is another team that could be affected, regardless of whether or not, their actual area. I'm sure they know plenty of people within Florida. It has to be taking over everything. And if I'm thinking right, I know that the wrestling company that's owned by the same people, they're not having their people come to work if they don't want to, because so many people are affected. I'm assuming Jacksonville is the same way. That sucks because it's going to be a great game, but I think their preparation could be worse than usual there. So I'm looking at anyone from the top 3. If I were to rank them now, I would probably go Allen, Hurts, then Jackson, but I don't think you can go wrong. And if I do another 3 lineup build, I think I might just have one of each.
Yeah, the Hurts thing is interesting. 8.2, and I personally, the way I feel about the Jaguars, impressed certainly out of the gate. I think this is a letdown game. Second game on the road, win pretty convincingly at the Chargers. There's some interesting pricing, at least on the Jags, some pieces that I would look at, but I just don't feel great about it. Uncle T, you sticking with the top range, or are you going to look to go down a little bit? There's some certainly interesting lower priced pieces here in some of these higher total games.
Yeah, you guys bring up some good points. Spread brought up some good points. I think, at least on this Wednesday, we talk about it all the time. It's more or less the first look and first, go around for me anyway, with you guys talking through the slate. Josh Allen at 8,400. Last week he threw the ball. He dropped back 65 times. 65. He was 43 of 65, 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. and they put up, what was it, 19 points. It was just kind of one of them games where if you looked at how many yards he threw for, 2 scores, thinking that they, again, blindly looking at a stat sheet, you would have thought that they would have maybe put up 30, but no, they didn't. And but man, he goes into Baltimore here where they're as vulnerable as anybody now, as far as giving up points in that secondary. I just can't imagine that if you wanted to go to Allen here, that he's not going to put up a good game. Especially coming off the loss, you got, what was it, Ken Dorsey, when he slammed the, the laptop and the, everything down in the press box here. I just feel like they're going to come out focused. I like Buffalo a lot in this game. I do think their defense is clearly much, much better than Baltimore's. I think the offenses have both been, obviously clicking on all cylinders. Lamar's been unbelievable, and I'm kind of not necessarily a Lamar hater. I respect how, the talent that he is. I haven't been on him at all this year. And I mean, he's put up 3 really good games, but so to kind of, the short way around that, I think Allen, if you wanted to spend up, is definitely a great option. You compare him with Gabe Davis. McKenzie had a really nice game last week, probably one of the better games he's had in the last couple of years. So you got some different pieces you can put around Allen. I'll probably stay away from Lamar, and I'll probably stay away from Hurts as well, to be honest, because it definitely is a letdown spot for Jacksonville traveling cross country after the just annihilation, really. Just a complete shocker that Jacksonville can go into Los Angeles and put up 38 points on that Chargers defense that we've talked about on this show the first couple of weeks. That, at least for me, I won't speak for you guys, I think that defense is pretty good. Now, I know they had a couple of injuries. Bosa went out, and I can't remember the outside tackle, I think, that got hurt. You guys might know. So I'm sure that had a little bit to do with it. But, man, 38-10, that was a dismantling. So, but I don't think I'll go to Hurts here. I think I'm going to pass on him as well. Probably pass on Murray and Herbert. I like these guys down in the mid to lower 6K range, JT, like an Aaron Rodgers. I haven't been on Rodgers yet this year. They haven't looked great, but 6,300 at home against New England, as long as the weather's okay. New England just got shredded last week, right? By Lamar Jackson, obviously a different type of quarterback here, but I like him there. Jared Goff, as crazy as it sounds, I'm willing to play anybody against Seattle right now, 5,900. So those are a couple guys in the mid tier that I kind of have interest in. And then if you want me to complete it out here, and I'll let maybe Spread get in with a couple of his cheap guys, but Geno Smith at 5,400 going into Detroit. And, Geno, again, another guy that it's not a sexy name, obviously, with all these other options, but put up a pretty good solid week last week. I think he outscored 4 of the 5 quarterbacks, one of them being Patrick Mahomes. Who would have thought that? And then even Cooper Rush, 5,300 in a matchup against Washington. That's not very good. I think they're in the bottom 5 in both defense and offense DVOA after 3 weeks. So those are the guys that I like, fellas. I like Allen up top. And then if not going to Allen, I like getting into that Rodgers, Wentz, not necessarily Wentz, Golf territory down there in the mid 6K, lower or high 5K range.
So this is what I talked about on the show last week. We talked about Geno Smith, talked about quarterbacks against the Falcons. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who they are. They're going to get to 20 fantasy points. So you give me a 5K quarterback against them, and I'm interested. And it worked out in terms of if I'd played the right players, right? We talked about Jefferson and Adams. But here, with respect to this week, you've got the Browns coming into Atlanta, playing in the Dome, second highest total of the week. Browns favored by 1.5. Jacoby Brissett. Nobody's going to want to play Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett, through the last 2 games, 9 of 54 rushing and 20-plus passing attempts each game. Spread. Can I interest you in Jacoby Brissett if you wanted to upgrade? You probably don't need him. Let me be fair about this week, because Devontae Adams is being the only receiver pay up. You do have some running backs that you could go up to in terms of Henry at 8.3, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon. Are you looking at any of these lower price quarterbacks?
Not really. The ones that do, see, because we don't have the spend ups that are available here. I just feel like I want to go with the higher priced players. I mean, even Russell Wilson at 6,700, I think that's a great matchup as well. And I know you talked about against the Falcons, but I wouldn't be surprised if against the Raiders, is a trend if this continues to go, because that defense didn't look very good at all. Trevor Lawrence is someone I think is going to do great this year, but this is the absolute worst matchup. We stay away from him. You can argue, right, that Mariota is just as good as Brissett there. I see that they're priced the same. And if you like the Falcons to win, like I do, maybe you think that's the way to go. We'll get more information on Myles Garrett, right? Because doesn't Mariota become so much more attractive if we don't have Myles Garrett? Who
I mean, so much more has degrees to it when you're talking about Marcus Mariota, I think. But you're right. He's in that price point where you would say, if I'm gonna punt, like I'm just not gonna play Carson Wentz against Dallas. Just not gonna do that. He's 6K. Goff at 5'9" against the Seattle defense is interesting. Uncle T, I agree with that. I actually have a take about the wide receivers for Detroit when we get there. I'm not playing Trevor Lawrence. Rodgers 6'3" is okay. And yeah, I guess you get to Mariota at that price point, and you could say, okay, I personally think I'd go Brissett over Mariota.
Yeah, and that's really just see how you see it. What about a Geno over Brissett going against Detroit, and the team might actually be down?
Yeah, the thing with Geno is, man, coming off a game where he played about as pristine as he can play, he hasn't been good on the road. It's a small sample, but he hasn't been good overall. Price went up a little bit. I think that's maybe like a 2% tournament play. You want to put him in a couple of lineups? Fine. I went heavy on him last week just because of the way this defense plays. I was honestly impressed with what I saw from Detroit's defense. They had Aiden Hutchinson back, and I think that made a pretty big difference for them. Yeah, they ultimately ended up losing the game, but man, shutting down Justin Jefferson, be interesting to see what happens this week in that game.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we'll see where they're going. I probably right now would lean those two over Brissett, but I agree. I want him more than Lawrence. I want him more than Matt Ryan. I want him more than Tannehill and Daniel Jones, Cooper Rush. So he's probably in that, between 5 to 6K tier. I put Brissett third. I think I might Mariota a little more and Geno a little more. But if you're building 20, I would mix all three of those in there.
Uncle T, really quick, any thoughts on these low-owned quarterbacks other than what you already shared?
No, I agree with what you said. I think, and when you went out a minute ago, I mean, Spread brings up a good point about Aaron Rodgers. You do have a 41 total. We clearly that's going to be my survivor pick. By the way, anybody listening, it feels like a free square with Green Bay this week. New England may not be able to keep up in that game. Probably won't be able to keep up. So that could easily be one of them 31-6 games or something like that. So. Yeah, again, this was my first look. I looked at Rodgers, but again, I maybe come off of him. But no, I really like Goff in there still at 5,900 and going down. I don't mind Geno Smith. I get the points about Cooper Rush, but I'm just not impressed with Washington at all. And he's one of them game managers too. But man, he's done well since he came in. So I'll probably stay off of Mariota. I'd probably be more in line to play Brissett. We're going to talk about receivers here in a minute, but he's got a pretty good rapport going with Amari Cooper after a couple weeks. I think 22 targets, over 100 yards the last 2 weeks, and touchdown. So if I had to go down there, I would go with Brissett and then Geno probably.
And again, another argument against Rush would be you've got the Mike McCarthy offense there, right? How much is he going to open it up? He's going to want to take the air out of the ball here without Dak Prescott. Spread, we'll start with you at running back. The top end here, you've got Derrick Henry, 8.3K in a dome in a matchup against Indianapolis. Nick Chubb, 7.9 in the matchup at Atlanta. And then Saquon is 8K flat in a matchup against Chicago. This is going to be at home. But man, when my first look here, when I looked at these running backs, I think the mid-range is kind of loaded here. You've got potentially Jamal Williams suiting up as the starter if DeAndre Swift misses, which the Lions have hinted at just 6-1 on DraftKings. What are your thoughts here at running back?
Yeah, Jamal Williams is not a lock, but he'll probably, if I go 3 bullets again, he'll be in 2 of the 3 at least if DeAndre Swift is out. At 6,100, you're going to get that starter usage there. And then I'm with you there kind of on liking the mid-range a little better. The two that are standing out to me is Eckler and Aaron Jones. Number one, we talked about, we don't expect New England to be able to put up points. I think Aaron Jones is going to have ridiculous usage up there in New England as Green Bay tries to get this, puts a couple touchdowns up and then just tries to end the game as quickly as possible. And if the Chargers have learned from their mistakes, now that's a big if, because this is the Chargers we're talking about, but Eckler should get a lot more usage too. So it's 7,700. I think we got two guys right there in the middle that could end up being the top scorers. Taylor's been a disappointment all year from a fantasy perspective when you contrast him that he's always the highest priced running back on the board. McCaffrey finally got 25 touches, I believe, over 100 yards. So they're starting to work him in more, and I could see people thinking that it's worth it there against Arizona, who I think does not have a good defense at all. I'm fine staying away from that, though. I'll see it consistently from him. I think these mid-range guys are more attractive. And then Henry, I think he's going to have a tough matchup there against Indy. He should get the usage, but hey, this isn't running on the Raiders. Indy's got a great defense. I expect Shaquille Leonard to be back, which should make things tough there for Henry. Barkley and Chubb, Eckler, Jones, right? I think that's the sweet spot right there. And then you mix in with the little Jamal Williams, and you have a nice little two running back combo if you want to do it that way.
I'm right there with you on Eckler, especially against Houston. We saw Khalil Herbert, the backup for the Bears, run wild all over them last week. You've got Justin Herbert, who's hurt. Clearly, the way to win for this team is not to have him throw it 25, 30 times. And for some reason, I don't want to digress into this because it'll take us in a whole new direction. They played the starters the whole game. That game was a blowout pretty much early on. But let me ask you about Aaron Jones, because you've got A.J. Dillon there. Yes, he ran wild against the Bears. Great game against the Bears. But A.J. Dillon continues to get his work. If the Packers get this game in hand, which I'm aligned with you there, I think that's what I expect here against this Patriots team, especially, Packers defense is expensive, but they're interesting and you can fit them because of the pricing. We'll get to that in a minute. But are you concerned at all that you're going to pay $7,500 for Aaron Jones and he's going to get maybe 2.5 quarters of work and you're going to see a lot of A.J. Dillon?
Yeah, that's got to be a concern, right? He might also get you there with only 2.5 quarters
against this defense,
against this team with the usage. So, that always has to be a concern there. But there's not a lot of true workhorses anymore either. So, I guess you could argue that Eckler's more attractive there, right? But you have those same drawbacks there with Chubb, and I think he's pretty attractive at 7,900. So, yeah, it has to be a concern. It does have to be a concern. But guys like him and like James Robinson, it's like, I know Etienne's going to get carries too. I think Robinson can still get me there at 6,400. So I don't think I'm going to worry about that too much. I'll just attack the matchups that I like. And then, if the usage isn't there, I'll just take note and move on. But for now, just looking at that matchup, I expect a lot of usage from him. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, it is a great concern though.
You mentioned Nick Chubb 7.9, and against Atlanta, you always prefer these running backs who have receiving capability. We saw it in the first game of the season. I think that Kareem Hunt at 6K is a very interesting wild card here against this Falcons team. And one other wild card, and then I'll throw it to you, Uncle T. He got the bulk of the carries last week. Didn't work out. He didn't get there. But Rashad Penny is just 4.9 again here in a matchup against the Lions. We saw it last week. They do not want Geno Smith as well as he did in that matchup. They don't want Geno Smith throwing the ball. This is the way Pete Carroll does things. Now, Travis Homer goes on the IL. That's one more guy that they cannot fit in there. So I think Penny is interesting. Again, tournament play, 4.9K against the Lions, who we've seen, not great. Maybe Penny gets a couple of extra targets, gets over 100 yards. He pays that off. Uncle T, where are you going this week at running back?
Yeah, for running back for me, Eckler is just staring out just standing out like a sore thumb for me. I know he, has been not the best based off of his price tag the first 3 weeks. The team has definitely been sputtering. You've got maybe not 100% Justin Herbert for sure. They're coming off of the, very disappointing home loss to Jacksonville. Now you go on the road to Houston, where they're giving up over again, small sample size. And I mentioned it to you guys in our chat there. are we starting to see some trends? Spread, you mentioned it with maybe the Las Vegas defense, maybe, and something that we're going to be targeting here going forward in these 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. I really think this Houston rush defense is brutal. They're awful. They gave up 281 yards on the ground to the Bears. Think about that. That's without Monty, right? That's with Monty getting hurt for the most part at the beginning of the game. 281. That's hard to, again, 1 week outlier, you can say, but I don't want to belabor the point. I love Eckler this week. He's my number one guy here on Wednesday night for sure. If you wanted to, so let me go back up to the top. I don't think I like these guys as much this week either. I haven't liked them really in the last couple weeks, but Jonathan Taylor, he didn't practice today. Again, I do think he'll probably play unless the things I'm seeing get worse. So 8,800, his price tag has come down a little bit, and he does get a decent matchup against Tennessee. I just don't know that I want to go up to 8,800 there. Saquon Barkley, I do think I mentioned it last week. It looks like he is definitely back finally from the injuries from the last 2 years. He looks really good and has put up 3 solid games. But now the price tags come all the way up to 8K. I think on opening day, week 1, what was he, 6,200, maybe 6,400. So now the price tag's creeping up on him. So even though I think he's played well so far, I think I'll pass on him. And you guys talk about or actually, let me get to one other one before I get to Jamal Williams. But Javonte Williams, it's a weekly talk on this show, but 6,600, he had 15 carries in the last 2 weeks after, I think, 6 carries in week 1. So I don't mind the carries, but I just don't know the upside when he's not going to get the ball inside the 10. It feels like they're always going to give the ball to Gordon. So I think it's a good matchup against Vegas, but I just, with Hackett out there, I just don't know what the hell he's doing. If there's anybody been more disappointing from a coaching standpoint after 3 weeks, it's definitely been Hackett. I love the Robinson call spread. I think you mentioned Robinson. He's played really well. I think coming into the year, at least myself, I thought maybe they were going to start easing ETN in a little bit more into the offense. And not that he hasn't, he's been more out of the backfield. I think they used him quite a bit on that last drive or two when they had that game put away against the Chargers last week. But Robinson's been very good, so I don't mind him. But you guys talked about JT. I think you mentioned Jamal Williams. I don't know if he looks really in a really good spot here. If Swither's ruled out, Jamal Williams looks like he's in a really good spot here. His price tag is obviously up a couple $100 from where he was at, obviously, a couple weeks back, but he does look good. And I don't know if he'll end up getting pretty chalky based off of the matchup or not. But going down a little bit further, I got 2 other names I want to mention. In addition to Penny, I had him down there. I think Penny's just way underpriced. 4,900. I don't want to belabor the point that you made, JT. They're great points. I can see him just smashing in this spot. He could easily get 80, 90, 100 yards and a couple touchdowns and just crush that 4,900 tag. So, but Devin Singletary against Baltimore, 5,900. Not sure how that game's going to go, but obviously it's the highest point total on the slate. We talk about the passing game with Allen and all the receivers, but wouldn't be shocked if Singletary maybe had a decent game there. And then Pierce, 5,600 going up against the Chargers defense, who, again, I wish I could remember the offensive tackle's name. Do you guys remember the left on the defensive side? I think they lost him for the year, and then Bosa went out. So
Rashawn Slater.
Yeah. And then Bosa is banged up. So I don't know.
Going to be out, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so again, you're looking at a couple big pieces there that are gone. So Pierce looked a lot better after that first week. Looked pretty good. I don't mind him there. And then I tried to make J.K. Dobbins work last week and kind of read into the, not necessarily hype, but he was getting a little bit of attention on Sunday morning. And I'm going to take a wait and see approach on Dobbins going forward until I see him getting into that offense like he was before the injury.
And let me throw something in there on that Javonte Williams play. So I know, if you roster him, you're going to be pissed. But I found this nugget here, and we can criticize Hackett, but it seems like this is the correct call. Since joining Denver in 2020, Melvin Gordon scores on 56% of his rushing attempts from the opponent's 3-yard line or closer. The league average is 48% with anyone but Gordon. Since 2020, the Broncos rate is 29%, including 22% with Javonte Williams. So maybe you can say sample size, but he's getting it done there. And it sucks for us if we roster Javonte Williams, but it does seem like it's the correct call.
Yeah, maybe the fantasy part of me, right? And knowing that eventually if not this year, right, going forward, obviously Gordon is not going to be in the mix going forward, maybe another year. Maybe it's the fantasy person in me, and we know some people out in Denver, and they're just clamoring for obviously Javonte to get the bulk of the work instead of it being 50-50. So, yeah, there might be a little bias there for sure, Spread, but those are some good points.
I agree with you in between the 20s. It should be 80% of Javonte Williams snaps, but if they're going to continue to let him vulture those touchdowns, it's hard for me to argue that that's not the right call.
Yeah, people in Atlanta want Kyle Pitts to get more targets too. And we don't coach the team. We don't coach the team, and you can't control it. And that's, again, it's a 12-game slate because you got a game that's in London, I think, in the morning. And so, Spread, you're absolutely right. You're going to end up, it's one of the more uncomfortable plays because the guy has so much talent, but you don't know how that coaching staff is going to use him. Definite upside there. Definite tournament play. The guy who's interesting, Uncle T, that you mentioned is Saquon. With Shepard out now, one tool down, and between Burkhead and Pierce, a bunch of carries, a bunch of rushes, a bunch of yards on the ground and through the air to the running backs for the Texans last week against the Bears. And I mean, he's gonna be the number one option here. I know he's 8K, but this could be a spot where you see Saquon go nuts because they just have nobody else. I mean, Kenny Golladay looked terrible on Monday night. They were trying to maybe showcase him for a trade, and it just didn't work out. Speaking of Kenny Golladay, Uncle T, I'll stay with you. We'll get into wide receiver. We mentioned this. A lot of the pay-ups are off the slate. In terms of highest price guys, it's Stephon Diggs for Buffalo, in a matchup against Baltimore. Devontae Adams is 8-3. And then you get a bunch of guys in the 7K range. Mike Williams on the Chargers. My guy, Amon-Ra. St. Brown, 7-7. And A.J. Brown, 7-4. Mid-range again, looking very attractive here. But I'll start with you. Throw out some names.
Yeah, mid-range is definitely attractive again. You're right. I mean, when we go up top, you got Diggs at 84 and DA at 83. Obviously, Diggs, you've got the money probably to spend up, I think, because we've already talked about possibly going mid-tier at the quarterback position. And we talked about some guys in the mid 6Ks and below at the running back position. So I don't know that necessarily salary will be a huge focus for us this Sunday in building our teams. But if you wanted to go up there and grab Diggs or Adams, I wouldn't fault you for it. I think I would take Diggs because clearly he's in a much, much, much better, spot going up against that Baltimore defense and secondary than Adams, right? Even though he's at home, he's going up against Denver. I think Denver's defense is again head and tall better than Baltimore. So I think if it's a 1v1 there, I would take Diggs 10 out of 10 and based off of the matchup and stuff this week. And going down a little bit, I think St. Brown, obviously, our guy, a little bit banged up. I don't know if he actually left the game last week, but I know he got banged up a little bit. I don't necessarily know that I'll go there, even though it's a good spot against Seattle. The guy I have the most interest in up top, guys, is Michael Pittman. I think 7,200 against Tennessee. It's tough to really like a guy on the offensive end, especially through the air when you got Matt Ryan throwing to him. I get it. But, Pittman back last week, I don't know. I think he's clearly the guy that Ryan will go to as long as he's in there and healthy. So I kind of like Pittman there. And then I like, in this mid to upper 6K range, I like Metcalf again, going up, again, pairing him with Geno Smith if you want. I know you guys weren't maybe as high on Geno this week, but you pair him up in that matchup in Detroit. CeeDee Lamb, off of a pretty good Monday night, obviously was in that winning team with us against Washington. And then Gabe Davis. We talked about Josh Allen earlier in the show. I love pairing him up if you didn't need to go to Diggs, pairing him up with Gabe Davis. And then if you wanted to run a couple guys back with him, Isaiah McKenzie down there at 5,100 had, again, one of the better games he's had the last couple of years in a Buffalo jersey. And then you could also throw in Dawson Knox. So, again, Knox has been a little bit disappointing. We'll talk about him in a minute. But going down a little bit, 6,300, I talked about it earlier, Amari Cooper. Man, I thought he was dusty. I thought when he went there, he might put up some decent, stats, but I've been very impressed. It's a small 3-game sample, but a lot of targets. Targets equal fantasy points, obviously, as we know. So I kind of like it. He gets a great matchup, JT, with with Atlanta in the dome there. So I like him. Drake London, 6,100, against Cleveland. I like that. And then going down a little bit, I won't take them all. Let Spread get in here. Garrett Wilson, 5,400 against Pittsburgh. I don't know that Pittsburgh's defense is as good as it's been in the past. Wilson, this guy's a stud. I like him quite a bit. I already mentioned McKenzie. And then one interesting guy, just because of price and name, I don't know that I'll go there this week, but Chase Claypool, 4,700 feels really, really, really cheap against the Jets. Again, I get it. You know, you got an offense that can't move the ball very well, and you got Trubisky there until they make a change. But Claypool feels really cheap at 4,700. But I'm not sure what you guys think.
Yeah, Gabe Davis, I think, is the play on the Bills this week. They were working him in last week, and I think this price tag, we have seen the connection that he has with Josh Allen. I think you can not forget about McKenzie completely for the rest of the year, but I think that Gabe Davis is going to overshadow McKenzie. I'll get to some of my other thoughts, but spread, where are you sitting at as we look at this midweek?
It's funny how things change. Normally, when I see a team going up against Baltimore, oh, I don't know if I want him. Well, that's changed with all those injuries. So Diggs has to be attractive. Devontae Adams, I think, will get the targets. I think there'll be an overcorrection there by Carr after the criticism with the fact that he hasn't been as involved in the offense. And it's been not only from the local fans, but from the national media. I think he'll get the targets. Will he get it done is a question. Yeah, Uncle T, St. Brown did miss some time. He came back in. I'd expect him to play. Will he be 100%? That's tough here. And then as we go down here, I do like some guys here in the value range. We talked about going, you know, if you like Brissett, you have to like Cooper, right? Right, JT? So Cooper's sitting there at 6,300. I don't, you know, Drake London, if you want to stack that game up, I don't hate that. He's at 61. And I really like Lockett at 5,900. The idea, you know, if DK doesn't have the huge game, you're sitting there with Lockett at 5,900 set to go in. And then if you did want to go for some value because you want to spend up at some other spots, I think there's some great options here as well. Dubes might be the number one receiver, or Dobbs. I'm not sure how we're pronouncing that one, but at 4,500 potential number one targets, even in a game where we don't expect Rodgers to be really active, he can get you there with the touchdown, 4 or 5 big receptions here. Duvernay's another one, right? If we talked about how bad the Baltimore secondary is as far as injuries, Buffalo's in the same situation. So maybe we should be looking at a guy like Duvernay at only 4,100 in a game where both teams, you know, they're going to have to get pass rush because these guys aren't going to be able to hold up in coverage there. So I think wide receiver is a lot of fun because there's so many good options here. It feels like if you spend up, you know, the top 2, I would expect you to get your money's worth. And then I think you can also find some great value here as well.
Yeah, you guys mentioned Cooper. I mean, 6.3 for Cooper, not historically great on the road, but this is in a dome and it is against the Falcons. So I like that play a lot. You also talked about some of the other guys that I'm interested in. I agree with you. I think Devontae Adams is going to get the targets. And then a couple of under the radar guys. Everyone knows how great Amon-Ra St. Brown is. DJ Chark at 5K against this secondary. Targets really haven't been there, but I think this is a spot where you could see him do really well. And then a couple of cheap wide receivers, Richie James, 4.0 flat on DraftKings for the Giants against the Bears secondary, which is just putrid. Yes, he's got Daniel Jones throwing to him, and maybe we don't need him this week, spread, because of the pricing. And then one last one, you mentioned earlier, you didn't think a whole lot of the Arizona defense. DJ Moore is now just down to 5.3.
Wow.
Terrible quarterback. Understood if you wanted to get a little different. I don't know if I'll go there myself. I think I prefer some of the other guys. Completely on board with you on Lockett, by the way. I think a Lockett will probably be popular, but DJ Chark will not. I think that might be the stack to make in the Seattle-Detroit game.
Yeah, guys, one last guy I want to mention. I want to get your all's take just because he was off a monster game after being a subpar of the first couple. How about Devonta Smith? Had 169 yards, a touchdown, I don't know, 12 targets, maybe 9 catches. He had a blow-up game. Do you guys usually like to come back regardless of the matchup? I mean, obviously the matchup will factor into your decision, but do you guys and I'm obviously taking out the top studs, right, which we can play every week, but guys that are maybe in this mid-tier where we're trying to find some guys in good matchups based off of matchup and price, are you guys more apt to go back to guys like that in the following week? Or are you more, kind of laying off?
Spread, I'll let you start with that.
Usually I lay off.
Okay.
There's a chance that they're going to be overvalued a tad bit, with the recency bias, and then of course hard to come back to. And then assuming, right, because Jacksonville actually has a competent coaching staff now, they got to see that, and they can't, they have to at least be aware of it. And when you're going with him and AJ Brown, that's going to be a great duo there. For Jalen Hurts. They've really done a great job getting him weapons, but I'm fine staying away, and if he beats you 2 times, he beats you 2 times, unless it's just a situation where it was a guy that I just loved preseason. And then I feel like, okay, well, now my prediction or my original is coming home to roost. It's appearing, it's here. A guy like Dobbs is actually one of them. He was someone that I really liked this year just because of the lack of weapons. I felt he could emerge. So he'd be someone I'd be more comfortable coming back to off a big game because I already had the prior there. But usually I like to stay away. The recency bias sometimes can drive up that ownership.
Yeah, it's something I try and do in every sport is not go back to those guys after they have a true ceiling game, which is what that was for Devonta Smith. I think AJ Brown's the better bet here. If we're talking about guys, and it wasn't really a ceiling game, but Amari Cooper has had 2 really good games in a row. I feel much, much more comfortable with him in this spot against the Falcons than I do against Devonta Smith, because who else are they going to throw to? I mean, Peoples-Jones, maybe Kareem Hunt. So what I'm going to do is in lineups where I'm going to play Kareem Hunt, it's not 15, 20%, whatever it is, I'm not going to play Amari. And I'm going to say, all right, the Falcons have seen the tape. They're going to work to do what they can to shut Amari down. And it is Jacoby Brissett, so that may not be as developed as you have to work to shut down some of the other wide receiver ones with better quarterbacks. Maybe it's Hunt that's going to catch a lot of those passes.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Someone like Amari too, who's a veteran that we've seen do it year after year. And we can argue that he's still underpriced because of the fact that it's Brissett. But boy, if you watch that Pittsburgh game, right, you or I could have thrown to him. I mean, he had 10 yards on each side of him. He's always been one of the best route runners. In fact, he's never had, from a fantasy perspective, never really been a bad option. His big issues has been drops in the big time. A lot of times after those drops, though, he already has 9 catches and 100-something yards. But he drops the big third down pass when the team really needs it. And that's why everyone goes, oh, I don't want Cooper on my team, blah, blah, blah. But fantasy-wise, obviously you would like the 10th catch, but you're already doing pretty good with him. So, I definitely agree with you there on when to choose to keep going with a guy over and over again.
Absolutely. And guys watching this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It is the big red button down there on the YouTube channel. We already talked about Uncle T's monster showdown day. Big T had a monster 280K showdown day. Tambo winning close to 100K in golf over the weekend. The members are winning every single day. No promo code right now, but all sports for one price. RunPureSports.com. I want to get through tight end and defense really, really quickly. We've got to get out of here. Tight end spread, I'll stay with you. You've got Mark Andrews, who's just been incredible so far to start the season. Huge connection that he had last season with Lamar Jackson. He's 7.1. From there, you really go down. I mean, you're looking at, after that, maybe TJ Hawkinson at 4.1, maybe Zach Ertz at 4.7, Pat Freiermuth in a matchup against the Jets at 4.2. Where are you looking at with tight end?
Yeah, I think Mark Andrews actually is a good spot here, but boy, it's always tough for me to pay 7,100 for a tight end just in general. It just seems like even the lower wide receivers have higher upside, but this should be a good matchup. Waller completely off. He's not allowed in my player pool. Maybe I'm just bitter because he dropped that touchdown pass, but I'm not expecting a lot from him. You have to pay 5,600. No, thank you. Pitts, everyone loves Pitts. I'm fine staying away from him. It still seems like they're falling in love with the tape and not the actual production there. Zach Ertz is someone, hey, all right. But who I really like here is Goddard. I know that Jacksonville has done pretty well against the tight ends, right, when we're looking at what's going on so far. But it's a 3-game sample size. I think this is a great spot for him. So I'd rather go down to Goddard. He's probably my favorite tight end out of all these players. And then if we're looking at some other ones, right, we talked about attacking that Cleveland-Atlanta game. David Njoku, you have to be considering him. You talked about where's our Giants tight end? We have to have a Giants tight end in here.
Bellinger in the he's probably,
if you want to punt the position, You know that Shepard's out,
Yeah.
right? At 2,800, how many does he have to do? And then I can run it up across the board. So
Yeah,
that's where I'm looking there.
And you made a great point about Andrews. I think Andrews is going to be, I believe he has a chance to get popular because of the pricing here. You can fit in, like last week, it wasn't impossible. But if you wanted to play the best on paper plays, you're like, I got to play Kelsey, right? I'm going to play Kelsey when the play was Andrews. So this week, he's easier to fit in. You talk about Kyle Pitts. I've been saying this on every show. I'd love him to do well. I think he has the talent to do well. Arthur Smith's track record is not really using his tight ends all that much. He didn't do it. Now, granted, he didn't have anyone with the talent that Kyle Pitts has in Tennessee, but their focus, I think, is on Drake London. Uncle T, you mentioned Drake London. I think he's a great play in that mid-range this week. Where are you looking at tight end?
Yeah, tight end's interesting because, Andrews, Spread mentioned it, it's tough to pay 7,100, but, he's got 31 targets, I think, after the 3 weeks, which, obviously he's his number one, Jackson's number one target. But I think the one thing that would get me on Andrews is 2 things. One you guys will agree on, which is, well, I don't know that you'll agree with it or not, but one, I think Buffalo is going to own them in this game. I know this point spread's only 3. One of my favorite plays of the week, from a betting standpoint, is going to be taking the Buffalo Bills here. I think it's a huge bounce back spot. I don't know that. I know the Bills have some struggles on their side of the defensive side as well, but I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up. And where I was going with that is I do think Baltimore is going to be playing from behind. So from that standpoint, and from the standpoint that JT you mentioned, we are going to probably have salary to spend up wherever we want. We don't really have where, unless we're going to double spend up at running back with Taylor and CMC, or combine Diggs and Adams, something like that combo, which we haven't talked about really doing tonight, and doesn't look like any of the 3 of us are thinking about doing that. You will have the salary to spend up on 7,100 Mark Andrews. So I will say that. And then going down a little bit, I like the Goddard call against Jacksonville. But I'm more, maybe a little bit more interested in Freiermuth. 4,200 feels like a fairly cheap price tag against the Jets. Hawkinson has that questionable tag. He hasn't been good so far this year. Hasn't really had much success at all in the first 3 games. But again, JT, he gets that matchup with Seattle that I think he could finally have a good game. Njoku down there, you got Conklin against Pittsburgh. And then one guy, Albert O from Denver, he's been awful, but that's probably because the team and the offense and Russell Wilson has been awful, but he does get a good matchup here in Las Vegas against the Raiders. So I don't mind him a little bit. And I think that might be it, but going back, I don't know that I'll spend up. I know Andrews is tempting for me because, again, the way I think that game is going to play out is Buffalo gets the lead and Baltimore is going to try to kind of keep up, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. But what that'll mean is more drop back passes for Lamar, more dump offs, and middle of the field open for hopefully Mark Andrews if you're going to play him. But I'm not really in love with the tight end position.
Definitely, assuming even 1 or 2 of these defensive guys for Buffalo make their return here. Definitely the toughest matchup, I think, so far, given that they've played the Jets, the shootout with Miami, and then New England. I mean, now you get Buffalo coming in. If they get a little bit healthier, it's easily the toughest matchup they've had. So great points there. I'll stick with you. Speaking of defenses, give me a couple that you like this week.
Yeah, we typically don't go over defenses, JT. I like it though. I like one over them. Well, we don't.
That's because Holden's here, and
we're usually
now I'm here.
Yeah, Holden's usually fading out at this point.
Right, Holden's asleep by now.
Yeah,
Holden's looking to go into the bedroom and practice his gag reflex.
Well, he's usually not even wanting to get through the tight ends and wanting to get off the show. But no, I mean, just looking at the pricing in here, you got the Packers, the top dog, 4,100. And just a smash spot against these New England Patriots. So I do think that game is going to be a blowout. I'd be shocked if New England was able to hang within the 10 point. I know the game, I think the spread went actually from 10 down to 9.5 briefly.
Looks like Brian Hoyer is going to be the quarterback.
I can't see that not being a dismantling. So 4,100 there. I don't mind that. 3,500 Dallas at home. Dallas's defense has been pretty solid. And you get Carson Wentz, who, Carson will have his moments, but Carson will throw the ball to the other team quite a bit. So I can maybe see a pick six, couple interceptions there. And then going down a little bit more, I really didn't see anything down in the cheap range, at least again, off of the first glance here that I like. We've had the first 3 weeks, we've had at least one team, if not two, down in this punt range, but I don't really see anything down there. Maybe spread can find one or two.
I do. Well, how are the Broncos priced less than the Raiders?
No.
You got to be kidding me. And I
2,700.
know that's because the Broncos offense has looked anemic, but it seems like they fixed that with the idea that Hackett's only calling plays now and he's got someone else running everything else. It seemed like they were crisper last week, and they were going against 49ers defense, who have a top 5 defense in the league last week. Now they go against the Raiders, and I can't think of one person on the Raiders who would start on the Broncos. And I have to pay, and I can get them for 2,700 and the Raiders are 2,900. I'm kind of interested in the Broncos. Now, of course, everyone can say the Raiders are due for a bounce back and there should be a big game coming here. But I don't know. If I'm not going with one of those top teams you talk about, give me the Denver Broncos. That's who I like as my kind of steal play there.
Yeah, Uncle T, I'm on board with you in terms of thinking about the way that Buffalo-Baltimore game could potentially play out. By the way, if the game does play out that way, it's going to go under and it's going to disappoint and not be the top game of the week, which means maybe we should be looking more at Cleveland, Atlanta, or Seattle, Detroit. But if you think that, then, I mean, it's interesting to think about maybe playing one of those Buffalo Bills defense there, right? Maybe look at the Bills defense. But in terms of going down low, I think Houston is interesting at 2-4. They've been okay. They've been a little bit better than advertised. Yes, they're terrible rushing wise. We saw what the Jags defense did at 2-3, right, Uncle T? They were in the Millie Maker winner. 2-3. Houston 2-4. You get a banged up Justin Herbert. Maybe he throws a couple of picks. And then Arizona 2-8. We don't think much of them, but you've got Baker Mayfield throwing them the ball. So you never know what's going to happen there. But that's it for us for the Old Guys Pod, aka the Wishbone, for Holden, who is recovering. Hopefully he'll be back next week. Fully expect him back. For Spread, for Uncle T, I'm JT. Simon, get us out of here.